Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the special meeting study session to order. Today is Monday, August 21st. Thank you all for coming. We're going to be discussing a few things. If you've had a chance to look at the agenda, if you wish to speak on any item, please feel free to fill out a card and pass it up to staff, and we would gladly entertain. All right, starting with the first item on the agenda is a discussion and public comment on. I'm sorry?
Where are the cards?
At the entrance, ma'am. Discussion and public comment on proposals for development of Daly City properties. We have 3 different sites, and I will turn it over to staff at this time. Ms. Martel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Tonight is the follow-up session to the interviews that the council conducted recently for potential development in Daly City. The last study session that the council had, during which you were able to interview all of the potential developers who had submitted proposals for development on the city's opportunity sites that have become available through our disposing of former redevelopment sites. So at the July 31st session, you interviewed each of the proposers, talked about they did a presentation for the council, and then you had a series of questions. The council chose to defer to a later date any deliberations in a public meeting about the various developers and to express any preferences, concerns that you have, requests for additional information. And so tonight we've scheduled, and I might add as well, importantly, for the public to have an opportunity to weigh in on the various proposals and provide you with their feedback before you make any decisions about how you would like to proceed. So tonight, this is the session. We have sent out information to the public. We've sent it out on social media. We've put it on the website. We've encouraged the public to be in attendance tonight, to weigh in on these projects and share their preferences for you. In addition, we have invited the potential developers who presented previously to attend this evening. And all of them except one of the hotel proposers, I believe, are present tonight and will be able to be a resource in case there are questions about any of the projects that have been proposed. Although we don't plan this evening to have any presentations from the developers themselves. We've already completed that step, and so this is more an opportunity for the council to have open discussion, to solicit input from the public, and then to provide staff with direction about what your preferences are and how you would like to proceed. But because the public was not heavily represented at the meeting on July 31st, and because we have attempted to solicit public input, I thought that this evening it would be important, before we actually open it up for council discussion about the various proposals and to solicit public input, that we present you with just a short overview of what the proposals are, so that those members of the public who are here that might not have been here previously, or those who are watching tonight and didn't see the presentations, will have a sense of what it is that we're talking about, what the available sites are, where they're located, and what is being proposed on them. So the Director of Economic and Community Development, Tatum Mothershead, has prepared a short PowerPoint presentation to review the various proposals and then we'll throw it open to the council's discussion. So, Tatum.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hello.
All right.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the
Ma'am.
City Council. Just another exciting step in this process to get our former redevelopment sites developed. Again, as the city manager indicated, I'm going to give a summary of the staff report that was provided and just a very brief summary of the proposals that we received, just to jog everyone's memory and to also bring the community in on what's being proposed. Just as a background, the city, with the assistance of our consultant Cosmont, released a request for qualifications that was released in March of this year. We provided about a month for the developers to respond. We received 7 qualifying proposals. Unfortunately, 2 of the developers did have to drop out. They were both proposing hotel developments. However, on July 31st, the City Council was able to hold a study session and interview the remaining 5 developers. And it was a nice meeting where the developers were able to present. There were a lot of questions from the council, including some very specific questions that were asked of all the developers, and then some free-form questions that came up as we heard the presentations. Again, during that time, the City Council, while they were able to ask a lot of questions, didn't have a lot of time to discuss the various proposals amongst themselves. So this meeting tonight is to provide that opportunity for the City Council to kind of weigh in on what they heard on July 31st. But it's also a time to take in public comment. So there will be public comment allowed this evening. The other purpose is that staff would like City Council to provide direction to staff as to who they would like to proceed through the second round, which would be a request for proposals response. I'm going to go into that in a little more detail in a bit. So now is my chance to give just a very brief summary of the sites that are available and the proposals that we received. So what we're calling Site 1 is actually 2 properties, and they're located at Junipero Serra Boulevard and Westlake Avenue. There's a portion of the site is north of Westlake Avenue, and a portion of the site is south of Westlake Avenue. So it's bisected by a street. We only received 1 proposal for that site, and that was from Duggan Mortuary. They actually own a mortuary directly east of the project site. So they've proposed a mortuary concept to expand their existing facility because there's been just an increase in demand for their services and event space. They're proposing a 52,000 square foot event facility that would include 13,000 square feet of event space, 28,500 square feet of additional parking, 5,600 square feet of additional office and retail. And what's important to note about this proposal is that they're planning only to utilize the parcel to the north. So the parcel that is south of Westlake Avenue would still be made available for development of some other sort. This particular property was zoned for office development as part of the Pacific Plaza plan development that was approved in 1999. The 2 sites were originally identified to accommodate 270,000 square feet of office and an extension of the parking structure. So this would be a little bit different. This would require a plan development amendment. They did provide an exterior concept plan, and I took the liberty of taking some pictures out of the presentations that they provided just so that people would have a visual that they could relate to, but I chose ones that I thought, represented the project well. So this was an exterior concept. This shows the frontage. This would be JS right here. So here you can see what the building would look like. And then I included the site plan as well so that you could see how it relates to the existing mortuary and the parking garage that's part of Pacific Plaza. Site 2 is at 1837 Junipero Serra. It's the vacant parcel just north of what's now being called DC Station. This site was already zoned for a hotel. The plan development that was approved in 1999 identified a 300-room hotel. And so we have, for this site, we received 2 proposals. The first proposal was from Majestic Hotel AF Conta. This was a concept plan for a 200-room boutique hotel. They did program it with some amenity space that included a 4,000 square foot outdoor heated pool area, a roughly 4,000 square foot food and beverage space, wellness studio, and some retail shops. This includes their concept plan. As you can see to the north, you have their site plan, which again is just south of the BART Kiss and Ride lot, so it's very proximate to the Daly City BART station, and then just north of the parking structure that serves the movie theaters. And the picture down here at the bottom is the concept for the architecture. As you can see, it's a modern design. They also provided some interior concepts as well, so just to give you a feel for what kind of hotels they build. Our second developer for, that proposed something for our hotel site was Ayers Hotel, which is a company out of Southern California. They also submitted a plan for our concept plan for a 200-room boutique hotel as well. However, they didn't want to specify any amenities at this point. They wanted to be able to take in some of the community's needs and wants and incorporate them in their plan. So their plan doesn't have anything specified at this point. So what I did here, since there isn't a concept yet, I included existing exteriors or exteriors that have been improved or under construction that they've done in Southern California. And then I've also provided some interiors of some of their existing hotels. Site 3 is at 6401 Mission Street. This is at the intersection of John Daly, Hillside Boulevard, and Mission Street. It's just north of the 88 Hillside development. This site was zoned when Landmark Plaza was approved. It was zoned for 74,000 square feet of office and retail. We got 2 proposals for this site as well. One of the proposals was from Northeast Medical Services, which is a nonprofit medical provider. They submitted a concept plan for a 30,000 square foot medical outpatient facility that includes 30 medical exam rooms, 8 dental operatories, an optometry clinic, a pharmacy, radiology clinic, and space dedicated for health education, as well as some retail shops. They did do a concept plan. Here I have for you is an elevation of their proposed exterior. As you can see, it's a difficult site, so it's a tough one to build on, but they've managed to fit in the facility that they would need on this site. And then I've also included a floor plan concept just so you can get an idea of what it is they're proposing. They're proposing the ground floor is commercial. They're able to get parking to serve this facility on the second floor, as well as utilizing some of the parking in 88 Hillside, which hasn't been finished out yet. So they would have to finish some of that parking as well. And then they would have 3 floors of clinic space above. The second proposal for this site is from Equity Residential. They actually own the development at 88 Hillside, which is immediately adjacent to the south. So they have control over the parking structure that's currently serving 88 Hillside, but would also serve the future development to the north. Their concept plan included an 8-story mixed-use project that could include 95 to 115 residential units, ground floor retail and commercial, and then the ability to expand the parking garage at 88 Hillside Boulevard. They did not submit a rendering or sketch of what their project would look like, but they did submit a variety of photos of recent projects that they've built in the San Francisco or San Jose. So here's some photographs to give you an indication of the quality of work that they do. So the next step would be that staff, in coordination with Cosmont, would prepare a request for proposal that would include a written term sheet that the preferred developers would respond to. The term sheet's going to give you a lot more specific information about the proposals, particularly about who they are, what their expected timeline is, a more detailed description of a project, and of significant importance to us is what they intend their purchase price to be. So this is where we're really going to get into the details of what developer may be the most advantageous for the city. It includes, their due diligence period, some of the contingencies that they may request before closing a deal. We expect that when we release the request for proposal that we will give the developers about a month to respond. Once we receive the responses on the RFP, staff will take a look at it, and then we will be presenting those to council, and it will be at that point that the city council will determine who their preferred developers are for each of the sites, and hopefully at that point be able to enter into an exclusive negotiation agreement. Based on, we didn't get a lot of responses, but I think overall staff felt that the quality of the responses was quite high. So staff at this point is actually recommending that all the developers that attended the interview move on to the next step. Now, of course, that's something that the council will be providing direction on this evening, but again, staff's recommendation is that we allow all of the developers to progress to the RFP stage. And that concludes my presentation.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Did you have a question for staff?
No, her voice.
Oh, your microphone, Ms. Tatum. I think your microphone went a little. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I guess she didn't hear you, but go ahead, finish.
Oh, I was concluding.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
All right, great. Thank you so much. All right, city manager and staff, thank you so much for that presentation. So with that being said, I do have one card on for public comment. Is there any of the developers here who wanted to address the council again? I guess, 2-minute comment. Okay, hearing none. Then before the council deliberates, I would like to open it up to public comment at this time. I do have one card here for this item number 1. Oh, we have some more. Thank you so much. Okay, actually I got more than one. So I'm going to put these in order. So let's see, we'll start off with the first one. And that was for Juniper Boulevard at Westlake Avenue, Dugan's. And I believe I have a card on that one. Start there. 1. Don't mind me, folks. Site number 1. Site, oh. Okay, I got 3 cards. So we'll start with the first one. Ms. Kim Gillette on representing DCYHC, and this is on site number 1, Dugan's. Good evening, Ms. Gillette. Oh, boom.
Hello, good evening.
Hi.
I'm Kim Gillette. I'm the director of the Daly City Youth Health Center, a collaborative program of the San Mateo Medical Center and of the Jefferson Union High School District. I've been working in this community for almost a decade now, and it has been a pleasure to partner with Dugan's, and they have been a great community partner for the Daly City Youth Health Center as well as many other nonprofits. They generously support our programs. They attend our events in the community, our breakfast, our open house. Number of staff come out to support us, and they're also very active in the Chamber of Commerce. They're active in the local community college with Skyline Community College. I know they also do the same with the DCPLA as well. So we really appreciate the work that they do in building a sense of community, and how they go about, and not just the work that they do in supporting the nonprofits, but also the work that they do as a mortuary. Unfortunately, we had a staff person that passed away a number of years ago, and they were very supportive to our staff and to that person's family as well. So we wish them much success and luck in their growth, and hope that you support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gillette. All right, next one, Mr. Mike Mahoney, Republic Services. Good evening, Mr. Mahoney.
Mr. Mayor, good evening. Council members, City Manager Martell, Mike Mahoney representing Republic Services, but also myself tonight. And I'm here to speak on behalf of the potential selection of the Dugans. I think it's no secret to anybody in this room, anybody who's watching, they are a tremendous corporate citizen. They've been involved not only here in Daly City, but events, causes, nonprofit organizations throughout the city and throughout the county as well. Our company has a long-standing relationship with them, going back many, many years to some of our predecessor companies with Daly City Scavenger. We've had a great relationship with the family. I can think that the city could not have a potential better development partner than you would have with the Duggan family. And they've done so much for the city, for the community, and I'm here to support them 100%. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahoney. Next, we have Mr. John Duggan. Duggan. You know, I always get confused, and people have to correct me all the time. So, okay, the restaurant is Duggan's. Duggan's is the butcher. Okay, it's spelled the same way, right?
It is.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, and members of the City Council. My name is, I know it's confusing, John Dugan, and my family owns and operates Original Joe's of Westlake. I'm here tonight to support the expansion by Duggan's Sarah Mortuary. I would like to start by saying thank you. Thank you to the Daly City community and its leadership that has made our success possible. It's a pleasure doing business here. And while our journey is just starting in Daly City, the Duggans have been doing business in Daly City for over 50 years. They've been an incredible partner since we've opened, and their presence in the city provides a constant stream of customers coming our way. It's not an overstatement to say that they're an integral part of our private dining business. I think together we add to the Daly City economy. More people using our services and the services of other businesses in Daly City means more jobs and more sales tax revenue for Daly City. With the closure of San Francisco Funeral Homes, more funerals will be coming to Duggan's. The expansion will allow Duggan's the necessary room to properly meet funerals needs. And just as important, the Duggans are an anchor to this community. They do business right, and they provide families comfort at a time when they need it most. They've been doing this for generations, and that's something you cannot replace. Their expansion should be encouraged. Please support the Duggan's expansion proposal. From John Dugan.
Dugan.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dugan. All right. That's it for the cards on the site number 1. Oh, we got another one? 3, did not realize public comment.
I had a card also.
Okay, I'm going to go through the cards, and when I come across yours, please, definitely give you a chance to speak. But you can speak on all 3 of them if you like, ma'am. Okay, gotcha. Okay, this is on site number 2, the hotel site. Okay, we'll start off with Mr. Del Shambari.
Should I comment on the first site first or not?
Well, oh, yeah, I got a note here. You would like to speak on all three sites?
Yes, I was wondering.
Okay.
If you wanted me to start
Well,
on side one.
you should get a card. I have, okay. One step at a time, please. I do have a card. Are you Miss Goldberg? Okay, so I have a card, and you wanted to speak on
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3. Okay. So, with your additional note that you want to speak on all three, I guess it's proper that you should speak on number 1 before we go to number 2. Miss Marcia Goldberg? Yes, ma'am.
So, hi. I've lived in Daly City for about 28 years. The last time I was here, there was a proposal by Dugan's to expand their residential thing for people, and that was turned down by the council. So my first point is, I don't see the council trying to preserve neighborhoods. All of these are very commercial buildings, bringing in a lot of people from the outside, probably bringing some income to the city, but we're losing the flavor of neighborhoods in Daly City. San Francisco, because the real estate has become so expensive, restaurants have left, small businesses have left, small Pilates studios or yoga studios or whatever else that makes neighborhoods have left. And I cannot understand why they're not coming to Daly City. Why we're not bringing in these businesses from San Francisco that can't afford to function there anymore to make a neighborhood. I mean, it's great to have a hotel and a boutique, but this is not Manhattan. This is Daly City. And I live in the old section of Daly City, the Crocker Estates, and I think that somehow, and I don't, I know a lot of you are new to the council, but there's like tunnel vision. There's tunnel vision. Building these hotels and that 88, now that building 88 Hillside, how many retail shops have been filled in that building? 3, 4? I mean, I haven't seen any new retail things there. There's the Filipino restaurant and there's an eye doctor. And meanwhile, it looks like everything else is still empty. And what is 5,000 square foot of retail space when they're talking about an event center of whatever that was? And what are we going to have there? What's planned for this tremendous event center? And why don't we have neighborhoods?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Goldberg.
Ridiculous.
Thank you for your comment. All right, that's all we have for the first site number 1. We'll move on to site number 2, which is 1837 Junipero Serra Boulevard, and that's the one with the hotels. I have a few cards on that one, and we'll begin with, we'll start again, Mr. Del Shambari. Good evening.
Good evening, council, staff. I just wanted to talk about all of the above, and my main point, what do I usually talk about? Daly City Dunes. I mean, so I just want to put a bug in your ear that possibly whatever is approved, that somehow some of the, there may be a mechanism to help fund the Daly City Nature Park, which Mountain Watch will be providing a resolution very soon about. I had a couple of other comments. Outdoor swimming pool in Daly City. Where's the water coming from? And, is the pool going to be indoors? It probably should be if it's going to be built. And when you're considering approving something, can you please consider green features such as like photovoltaics and hot water heaters on the roof and water conservation, and also plants from our nursery if anyone so desires, which are native plants collected from San Bruno Mountain. Those are my comments. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Shambari. All right, the next card I have is Maya Altman, representing, no, we're talking about the hotels. Oh. Don't mind me, folks, I'm getting all, okay, that's for this one. Okay, we have Ms. Marsha Goldberg.
To be continued.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I recall when that site was originally supposed to be a hotel, when they had the movie theater, and then the economy in 2008 went south, and so the hotel never got built. But again, I want to make the same point, that we're not encouraging neighborhood living in Daly City. We're bringing in a lot of outsiders. We're bringing in big hotels as if we're downtown San Francisco, Union Square, which we're not. We're not. And I really want to encourage the council to consider bringing in these small businesses, different restaurants, not these fast food places, which I have nothing against fast food, but it'd be nice to have more than two, quote, in my opinion, decent restaurants in Daly City. Having the hotels is not going to encourage the people who live here. They just built that Wellington Heights, I don't know if you guys saw that, $1 million homes. People need places to go eat in Daly City. They need places to shop in Daly City. Bringing in all these other people when you're building Wellington Heights and 88 Hillside and other developments, and not considering the people who live here and are paying property tax to be able to shop, live, and buy in their own neighborhoods.
Thank you, Ms. Goldberg. Next card we have is Ms. Gabriella Maxman.
Hi, Council. I'd just like to speak in favor of the proposal from AF County. I feel that they put in a lot of work into the proposal, providing a lot of visuals and put in a lot more effort than the other company. I feel that in order to streamline this process, I believe that a decision should be made in favor of AF County to be the sole vendor moving forward, because the sooner we can get the hotel, the sooner we can start collecting the taxes, and the sooner that we can balance our budget. And I think that it would be financially prudent, since it looks like out of the two that AF County is actually the more serious of the two vendors, that council should just make a decision to allow them to move forward. Thank you.
Ms. Maxman, which one did you say? AF? Majestic. Oh, Majestic. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you. All right. Ms. Cynthia Gomez. Good evening, Ms. Gomez.
Good evening, Mayor Sylvester. Good evening, Vice Mayor Manolo. Good evening, Council Members Christensen and Gongona. My name is Cynthia Gomez. I'm a research analyst at Unite here too. We are the Hotel Workers Union, and we represent approximately 12,000 workers in San Mateo County and in San Francisco County, including several hundred right here in Daly City. Our union is a union of immigrants, a union of people of color, overwhelmingly a union of women, and we are a union that develops our members as leaders. Some of those leaders call Daly City their home. What I wanted to talk to you about are some principles and some requests that we are making of you as you get closer to your final deliberations. We just finished doing a survey of workers at non-union hotels in San Mateo County. And of those approximately 30 workers surveyed, we learned some startling things. 42% of the housekeepers reported struggling with a workload that was more than 20 rooms per day, which leads to terrible long-term health outcomes. 55% reported skipped breaks. Their mean salary came out to $27,000 a year. Their mean rent burden was 64% of their income on rent. What we learned is that the issues that these hotel workers struggle with has nothing to do with violation of labor laws, since in almost all cases their employers were following federal, state, and local laws. What we learned is that the things that protect such workers, things such as limits on workload, things such as company-provided affordable health care, things such as a living wage, are not things that can be mandated by anything other than a union contract. And so what we're asking of all elected officials in the county is that you remove any barrier to workers collectively bargaining, and specifically that you choose developers who have agreed in writing to remain neutral on the question of unionization so that workers have the opportunity to collectively bargain for those issues. So we ask you to take those into consideration as you select a developer.
Thank you, Ms. Gomez. All right, that's all I have for site number 2. Site number 3, and that's for 6401 Mission Street. I have 2 cards. We'll first start off with Amaya Altman. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. Thank you. My name's Maya Altman. I'm the CEO of the Health Plan of San Mateo, which is the Medicaid managed care health plan in San Mateo County. And I'm speaking in support of the proposal from Northeast Medical Services, their proposed project. Health Plan of San Mateo was founded 30 years ago. We have 147,000 members, so that's 1 out of 5 residents of San Mateo County. Nearly 40% of our members, 57,000, live in the northern part of the county, and we have 26,000 members who live in Daly City. NEMS is a vital part of our provider network. They have a site right now in South San Francisco, but going into the future, we need solid providers like NEMS to serve the low-income people in this community. NEMS is a nonprofit, federally qualified health center that successfully provided health care, primary health care in San Francisco and other locations for nearly 50 years. They're a fabulous organization. They're very sophisticated. They're a very good provider. We've worked closely with them to improve health outcomes. They have a proven track record of developing healthy communities. For example, revitalizing nearby businesses in Visitation Valley, which is one of their newer sites in San Francisco. They're going to bring in a significant amount of federal and state funding, a few million, into the area with this project. And NEMS is also part of a strategic alliance we have with Seton Hospital and the health plan and NEMS to ensure there's a strong healthcare infrastructure for the next 10, 20 years in this community. So I urge you to support their project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Altman. All right, we have Marsha Goldberg.
Feels like there's a tsunami going on here, and that no matter what I say, you're going to go ahead and turn this city into corporate headquarters. And I wonder where all these people are going to live, all these workers in these hotels and the boutique hotels. And where are they going to live? Where are they going to eat? So, I mean, I really appreciate the effort you guys put. I know it's really difficult. It's all volunteer, or whatever you get paid is really not very much to reflect how much work you put in. But I think you're really losing. As I say, I've lived here for 28 years. I've seen major changes, a lot of improvements. But I think you're headed down the wrong road in terms of preserving Daly City. When you think of San Francisco, you think of all their unique neighborhoods, Visitation Valley, Noe Valley, the Portola. There are neighborhoods, and each neighborhood has a distinct feeling to it and opportunities to sit out and have coffee or whatever, cafe. Here, it's like going down the freeway, It's like going down Highway 5 and you stop off and there's a fast food place here and a fast food place here and a fast food. That's what Daly City is turning into. And this is the last opportunity for you guys to really think about what you want Daly City to turn into. What kind of city do you want this to be?
Thank you, Ms. Goldberg. All right, this was a, all right, that's all the cards that well, I'm going to open it up now to us. I have no more cards on either all of the sites, so what I would like to do now is receive.
More cards?
So, well, I would like to talk just briefly on the hotel.
Oh, wait, he's one of
Wait, but you still need to fill out a card, sir. Oh, please.
Sorry about
Okay,
that.
all right. Oh, develop,
cards. Sorry about
okay.
that, guys.
Well, so they don't have to. Okay, okay, we have you on record, sir.
Recognize you over there.
Right. Yes, ma'am. I'll make mention again, if there's any developers here on any one of them, I mean, if you want to give a quick 2-minute comment, please, you're more than welcome. Okay, just in case we might have missed something. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. Council members, I just wanted to touch base a little bit on the project quickly for the Majestic AF Canta proposal regarding the unscripted hotel. I believe a member of the community who spoke earlier may not quite understand the project and what we're trying to do, that it is creating jobs, but it is also trying to create a sense of community and also creating things like restaurants and good quality restaurants where people can come and enjoy, and retail opportunities where people can come and shop. So I think those kind of, I think that those kind of issues are things that we're trying to address in doing a mixed-use project while the hotel is the anchor of the overall development. I think the other thing that's important to mention that wasn't in the slideshow was that we are planning also to have meeting space, because given the proximity to SFO, being able to pick up overflow business from San Francisco proper right now coming to this area is actually something that needs to be done. There's actually not enough meeting space in San Francisco anymore to handle all the corporate groups that are in the area. And the proximity of the airport only boosts that a little bit further. I think the last thing I also want to mention was, I know there were some giggles about the pool, but I do want to touch on that, is that, you know, in a lot of things that we do in the hospitality industry, a lot of what we design and create go with two things. One is brand standards. What is a brand demand? Unscripted is a brand by Dream Hotels. And also, what do the rating agencies demand? And one of the things that people require in those rating agencies is a pool. And oddly enough, and I know this is a little counterintuitive, is that a pool is one of the first things people look at or look for. It doesn't matter if they use it or not. They say, oh, they have a pool. How nice is it? And then they don't use it, and then they keep going. But the rating agencies will dock hotels if they don't have the pool. So what we're trying to do in newer hotels is create shallow pools, almost like lap pools, but it's something that can be then used as an outdoor amenity. So while we're saying it's outdoors, the idea is to take the extra space on the site that can then be some kind of like quote-unquote open space, some kind of outdoor area activity, and use that and make it multi-purpose. That's something that you can't really do with an indoor pool, because then it becomes humid, it smells like chlorine, it's harder to maintain because of the corrosion. So those are all things that we're looking into and trying to address. So while I know there are giggles in the outdoor pool, we do stand by that, given what the rating agencies and brands demand.
Okay.
Just to add.
Sorry? This way, please, talk to us. Please.
Sorry.
Right.
Just to add to it, the pool has a, sorry, Mayor, the pool can be covered, so it can be used as an outdoor space. And it's also, our building is green. Since it wasn't mentioned, it's very, this presentation here is very short and brief. And so I'm not sure if the community was able to see everything that we had talked about 3 weeks ago. That's all.
So we just want to hit those items, so we
Great.
appreciate your time.
Thank you for taking the opportunity and to address some of the community comment as well. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other developers before we move on who wants to speak? Clarifications? This is the time we're receiving information. All right. Yes. I would think so, Councilmember Christensen. Okay, I'm going to open it up to council. Sure.
I have in my notes for the Majestic Hotel that you were committed to paying prevailing wage.
Oh.
And that your other hotels are union hotels.
It's all project dependent, and it also depends on the management company. In the Bay Area projects that we are working on, yes, there is union involvement in what we're doing, both on the construction and on the operations side.
And New York.
So there would not be a problem with you allowing your workers to unionize?
There would not be a problem, no.
Excellent.
Madam Christensen, I think that was item number 10, and I'm glad you validated that.
Never hurts to
Exactly, and
cover it again.
and the right to organize is otherwise called card neutrality.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. Now I'm getting a little confused here. Let's see. Because I was taking some notes as we were going down Majestic. What did I have for Majestic? Oh, that was nothing. It was, the land was approved back in '99. That's what I wrote. Vice Mayor?
Sure. I do have a question, and it's nice meeting you both, around what you mentioned earlier around your the pool and it being an open space that maybe, you know, that can be utilized either than swimming or of sort. You know, there's some areas within the Bay Area that use utilize public open space. So I wanted to know if you've thought about that, where this would be accessible to the public.
Well, I think there's two parts to that. I think, yes, it's important as a sense of community that people can access green areas. The challenge with the hotel is we also have to have security. So that's something that we would have to work out with the planning department, and then also Park and Recreations, who's liable for it, who's maintaining it. If somebody slips and falls and, you know, breaks something, who's liable for that? So there's a lot of things we're certainly open to the conversation, but there are a lot of pieces that we would have to work through to make sure that it's equitable to both sides. Definitely
Understand. I think any time there's an opportunity to provide more open space for our community is definitely important, given the lack thereof.
Sure.
And then also, I've seen that you do have a community involvement, and that's what I noticed in your proposal. You did have a more comprehensive proposal that I saw, and so I think you know, you've heard from community members that have stated today kind of what they would like to see, and it's always great to see partnerships. For me, I think it's great. I mean, the question was asked directly around how do you support, you know, workers or whatnot, and your openness to do so, and your projects in the Bay Area show that, you know, there is an openness towards that, and that is really important. I think, as we all know, in the Bay Area, there is the need for families and individuals to survive in the climate that they're in. And so ensuring that there's equitable wages and that sort is so important. And so hearing that off the bat is important, so thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Christensen, I'm going to follow your lead. Anything else, either for this one or another developer, because I took some notes on all of them as well.
Well, just to comment to some of the things that the public said
Okay.
about the hotels. Where will the workers come from? God, I hope they come from my neighborhood. I live within walking distance of that hotel. And we have, we're a low-income neighborhood, and a large number of our residents are either unemployed or underemployed. And I know in discussions with neighbors, people are looking forward to something happening on that property where they would be able to get a job. So I think that answers that question. People will not be coming into Daly City to get those jobs. The people who are already here, we have many people who would love to have those jobs. And another comment is, why don't we bring these businesses in? Part of it is you can't make a business come. You can invite them, but you know, it's a privately owned thing. The city does not have control over who comes. We've had an economic development department that has worked for decades to get all kinds of businesses to come to Daly City. Big businesses, small businesses, any kind of business. We have, like on the northern part of Mission Street, there are many buildings that are commercial that are either empty or almost empty. So there's plenty of opportunity here, but it's hard to get people to make the move to a different town with a different demographic, and they have to be confident that their business is going to be successful or they're not going to move. So it's not like we can promote our city, and I know our Chamber of Commerce does that, and certainly members of the community do, and members of the council do, and city staff does, but it's up to the individual business owner to make that final decision about where they're going to come. And we certainly want to make it very clear that we encourage all businesses to come to Daly City. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Christensen. From my colleagues, any other questions for developers? Okay, I'll start off. I know I'm going to get this wrong. Duggins. Is it Duggins?
Yes.
Okay. I just had one question, and that was the 28,500 feet of parking. I think I recall during the proposal that you were going to pave the south side of the street. The south side.
Well, during construction.
During construction.
If hopefully this goes forward, the somewhat blighted lot
Yes.
across Westlake Avenue.
Yes.
That could definitely use some sprucing up and beautification. It would work out well for us if the city would allow us to lease that parking area and we could repave it and restripe it and make it look brand new. We do fully understand that that is in the future going to be a beautiful office development, but you know that could take 4 to 5 years before that actually comes to fruition. So in the meantime and during construction, so we have ample parking and won't affect the streets or the neighborhood there, it would be ideal to be able to beautify the lot across the street and also provide additional parking during construction especially.
Great. I remember, yeah, Ms. Martell. go
Mr.
ahead.
Mayor, I do want to clarify the statement that Mr. Duggan just made. We don't plan to wait 4 or 5 years to develop that site.
Okay.
I understand that the
Yes.
Duggan's proposal represents a departure from what we had planned for that corner. But our intent, depending upon what the decision of the council is regarding this project, is to remarket that site.
Sure.
Smaller footprint, perhaps, you know, and that kind of thing, but we don't want to miss this development cycle. And if we can remarket the site in a different configuration, we want to do so as quickly as possible and move forward to dispose of that site. So I just want to
Right.
clarify that that is what our intent is.
Is that,
But
Mr.
when you
Duggan?
go to market the property, it will look a lot nicer.
Okay, all right, now, Mr. Duggan, wait, I got another question. Ms. Tatum, can you go back a couple of slides to the rendition? Right, please. Okay. Right there. Is that retail? Is that going to be retail?
That's retail on the lower, on the Juniper Serra Boulevard corridor there in front.
Okay.
Yes.
Because we have retail already just down the block, the theater, the Cold Stone. So no thoughts yet as to what's going to go there.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm just asking.
Two priorities will be a flower shop, obviously.
Okay.
Obviously. And secondly, we would like to have a coffee shop provider there as well. Since we lost the Starbucks there at the, you know, the office building, you know, even myself, when I get off the freeway each morning coming to work, I have to go up to Mission Street to Starbucks. And they're very nice up there.
Yeah.
And they all know me very well, and we support them. But it would be nice to have a coffee shop there as well. Not just for our clients, obviously, but for everyone. It's very easy access off the freeway there.
Right. Well, I like it, and you know, I think more about food. You know, like
I said last
boiling
meeting,
crab or a chicken place or something like that. You know, because you got the parking there, and everybody's going to come there. So, okay, that was all I had. Anything else from Mr.
We'll have crab sandwiches.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that visual up, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Duggins. I that's great to see that there is a plan for retail on the ground floor. I think there was a sentiment in the community earlier around how do you bring small businesses and keep a balance. And so you providing retail on the ground floor definitely meets, you know, it'll provide more opportunities for our community. And also, I don't know, maybe a bakery of some sort. But I look at the aesthetics of it and seeing that it'll be an event space and expansion of your business, which is, you know, great. But as it being an event center, as it was notated within the RFQ, I'm just curious around, you know, just making like in the availability of the event space and how it would be, I don't know, eventually what it would be called. I think it would draw like a wider audience of sort. But I'm not trying to impose anything, but I think that it would be, looking at it, would definitely be suitable for your business as well as other types of events if it's called an event center. And therefore, I don't know if you have had any thoughts about that.
I definitely see that other events could be held there.
Yeah.
You know, we go every year to the Skyline breakfast, Skyline College breakfast, you know. Events like that could easily be held there. Obviously, I don't think we would want to get into weddings at this site.
Yeah, of course.
You know, amplified music, not, you know. But one of the things we're really trying to have an alternative to keep people here in Daly City is, you know, now when we have a large funeral reception, almost every funeral we have has a reception. Many now go to, and the larger receptions that are going to the Irish Cultural Center in San Francisco and the Basque Cultural Center in South San Francisco, because there's really not, those are the two venues for larger receptions, and we'd like to be able to keep those here in Daly City.
Right. So basically, the businesses you've been partnering with would be the caterers.
Correct.
In the future. Yes.
The Dugans down at Joseph Westlake have they've catered events at our very small reception facility that we have now. We a few years back we transformed one of our chapels into more of a reception facility, but it's much smaller.
Okay. So we can see that it would be Daly City businesses that
right,
continue
or,
to partner with.
You know, or you know, like the new hotel that's going in. If they have a business conference that maybe they're not all staying at the hotel, but we could work with them too as far as having some of their conferences at our facility as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay.
If anyone else needs a copy, it's an abbreviated copy. I do have. I brought some extras here, and I'm including the public on that as well.
Okay. Thank you. I like to get a copy. I like to look at pictures. Thank you. Okay. I have a question for Northeast Medical, NEMS. Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you so much for coming. I heard through the presentation about 8,000 feet of retail.
Correct.
Now, if I recall, I think we were going to put a pharmacy down there as part of the retail, or was that going to be in the building?
That was going to be on that floor.
Oh, on that floor. So do you have any plans as to what types of retail for that building?
No, our first concept was, I mean, we don't have any
Not yet,
official.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, just a thought. I mean, you know, if I was dropping off an elderly person and rather than wait in my car in the parking lot, maybe I'd go into the coffee shop, Starbucks or something, and just have coffee and just
We
wait.
definitely thought about the coffee shop.
Okay.
We thought about optometry.
Oh, okay.
Something right there.
Great.
Something with the pharmacy. Those are the retail things that we were kind of thinking of.
All right, thank you. My second question is parking. I had something on parking. I just made a little note. parking and on Hillside, I think you're gonna have a drive-through where they
It
can do a
is.
drop-off?
There's gonna be on the second level, there was gonna be parking at the site.
Okay, I guess this is for staff, and we're going to perhaps get part of 88 Hillside that has not been finished yet.
That's correct.
To help assist, to alleviate some of the parking. Oh, great. Okay, I just wanted to be sure about that. That's all I have. And this is medical services.
That's correct.
Okay, I would hope that within your proposal, I'm showing here item number 10, and this applies to all developers, other relevant terms, for instance, the use of union labor, covenants, buyback provisions, and et cetera.
Correct.
Now, being that this is a medical facility, I do know there's the NUHW, National Union of Healthcare Workers, or, if they would have the right to neutrality as well. Just something to think about.
Yes.
Okay?
We definitely, from project perspective, we definitely have our prevailing wages are in union shop for.
Prevailing wages union shop.
For the actual development of the program itself. Is that, I'm sorry, did I?
Yeah, I think you're getting close to it, but at the same time, I'm sure you're going to have over 50 employees, and, we don't want to cause any disruption. I don't want you to have any disruption, and I think having something that you would offer in operation, some sort of neutrality, that would be good.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Any questions for NEMS?
Just a comment. I remember when you first made your presentation, because your clients are predominantly low income and very low income, that the convenience of having that bus stop
Yes.
right there, it's close to BART, it's close to the bus stop, and that bus stop is currently the busiest bus stop in all of San Mateo County.
It is.
So it really affords our residents the opportunity to get to a medical facility.
I really want to reiterate at our clinic on Eastmore, right, we have about 6,000 of our patients there. About 65 to 70% of our patients are under the 200% federal poverty level. So the majority of our patients would benefit from public transportation. Having said that, up on you're right, correct, on that hill, that's where we have BART, Samtrans, and Muni, and that's where, from a zip code perspective, a majority of our patients would be coming to, too.
I know the original Daly City where I live and the Crocker have a lot of low-income people living in those neighborhoods. Yeah. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Hello, good evening. So out of the clientele that you have on Eastmore, I'm just curious, and this may have been answered, what's the total amount of Daly City residents that go to your clinic?
We have about 6,000 members right now.
Okay.
6,000, yeah.
But are they, Daly City residents? That's my question.
They're all on the participating zip codes.
Okay.
There. Yeah, and it's tied in, so that would be they would be.
So what would be the zip codes?
94015. I'm sorry, I don't even remember the zip codes off the top of my head.
94014, 9401. Okay.
That's the majority of our patients.
About 6,000. Okay, great. And it's great to hear that you're including the retail on the ground floor. I think it's important, especially in top of the hill in that area, the foot traffic and providing another resource for community members, if it's a coffee shop or whatnot, but the ground floor, making sure that there's accessibility to just revitalizing the local economy down there, providing an opportunity for a small business, I think is huge. I think in all of this, it's integral, right? Because you're providing a medical space, but yet if you have a space there for a small business that can emerge, then we're all kind of uplifting the community together. One last question again is around your design. I know that's just conceptual at the moment. Are there going to be any areas in the building, for instance, as I know I asked this of the hotel, I'm going to also ask this of your development around public open space that people can utilize?
When I was talking to the architects, what we were thinking is the opening space is probably right there on the corner, right there. That was probably the only
Remember we were
spot.
talking about fitness station? I told you something that was a public access, a pull-up bar or something like that people could pass by. Remember when we had our meeting?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you remember when we had our meeting, I told you about the public spaces that had fitness type?
Yes,
places,
yes, yeah.
And I referred a couple of them to you.
Yeah.
If you had to had you get a chance to take a look at any of them?
No, I'm sorry, I probably haven't had just look at that. With the open space, they were thinking more of a concept of having places for people to sit and just open things like that.
Well, if they can sit, they can do a pull-up.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, I agree.
So
I think we were thinking on the other side, right? On the other side.
Because I see people walking by there all the time.
Yeah.
They'd really rather not sit.
Yeah, I think we were thinking the other side right near, that might be an area where they can do some of that exercising and things like that.
Right, on the back side and south, right?
Mm-hmm, right
Yeah,
next.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good question, Justin.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, my question is for staff. As we move forward, I do understand that Planning Division puts in a lot of work. They worry about the aesthetics and issues like that. And I know some of these developers, I mean, I got a few renditions here, which looks like it blends in well with the neighborhood. But does staff make recommendations? Maybe you shouldn't use this type of style or for the area.
Yeah, so basically, right now, we're just selecting the developers to progress. However, once they're chosen, they will have to go through the normal entitlement process that every development goes through.
Gotcha.
And that, depending on which developer is chosen and what, how their proposal fits in with the existing zoning, will affect what the process will be, but they will go through, at the very minimum, a design review process. So yes, looking at the materials and the design will be looked at. So at this point, we're in a very conceptual phase. It's just to give the council an idea of what kind of development that is being proposed and what they could expect to see there. But we're far from the fine details at this point.
So to expand on what Tatum has just said, if you look at your staff report for tonight's meeting on page 2, where we talk about recommended next steps. So what the council should be focusing on tonight in terms of your deliberations about any of the specific proposals and developers, or all of them, if that's what you choose to move forward into the next round, the kinds of things that we're focusing on at this point, because there is no project. They have concepts of what they'd like to do, but there are no projects. So what we're interested in getting feedback from you about, so that we can proceed with the next round that will help to narrow the field down and hopefully then allow the council to make a specific decision about selected developers, is to look at the basic project that they're proposing conceptually and how that fits with what the land use entitlement is currently, the qualifications of the developers. They provided some background information. We provided background information to you about their qualifications. And then from those kinds of things, if the council wishes to select one specific developer per site, or if you want to, as the staff has recommended, because we only have a very few developers who have proposed on these sites, perhaps consider moving all of them to the next step, and then we can get more detailed information on which you will make a final decision. Right now, you've got some general information. You've heard presentations. We've provided you with some summaries of the developer's qualifications. But the next round should really separate out the developers in terms of who really has the potential to go forward, who has a real concept. And in the next round, the developers would be required to detail much more specifically and provide much more detailed information regarding their qualifications, things like what they would anticipate would be the purchase price for the properties that they're talking about. They would provide us with a lot more detail about the the source of funds that they would use, assuming that we have been very clear that there would be no public subsidy for these projects, the amount of time that they would need for due diligence, all those specific kinds of things. We don't have enough information at this point. But if the council wishes to move forward with one or more of these developers, that's what we're seeking tonight. And then we will move forward with the second round as we've outlined it being a more specific request for proposals with much more detail.
Thank you, Ms. Martell. All right, hearing what you've just heard, I'll entertain a motion from any of my colleagues.
What are our choices again?
All of them, or specific ones?
There's so little of them, why don't we just put them all forward?
Isn't
that a good idea?
Please, yes, sir.
Consensus here? Okay.
Okay.
Just move forward.
Okay, so would you like to make that motion, Mr. Gingona?
Make a motion, we move forward and consider all these, all of them as we go forward.
Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Vice Mayor. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So we will move forward with preparing an RFP for round 2 of the selection process, and along with that, a timeline that we anticipate for receipt of the more detailed request for proposals and how that timeline will work going forward.
Thank you.
Yes. No winners or losers.
Can't win if you don't play.
Everybody's a winner today.
All right. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, item number 2. This is a policy discussion regarding potential minimum wage increase. And I'll turn that over. Yeah.
We don't have one at this point.
Vice Mayor.
There you go.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, tonight I've provided you, and we'll walk through a staff report with you regarding the potential for considering a minimum wage increase citywide in the city of Daly City. At the request of the mayor, the staff has researched the options that are available to the council to potentially increase the minimum wage here in the city. As part of our analysis, we've conducted a survey among cities in San Mateo County and Santa Clara counties, as well as other jurisdictions statewide that have already taken action on the minimum wage. So the report that I'm presenting to you tonight is an initial analysis of the use of wage requirements and identifies policy options for the council to consider. Along with the staff report, I have provided you with a spreadsheet of an inventory of local minimum wage ordinances in cities and counties. This is actually across the country, but all of the cities and counties in the state of California that have, as of July of this year, enacted some sort of minimum wage ordinance are included on this. I apologize for the small type, but we were not able, because this document is actually was produced and maintained by the University of California, Berkeley Center for Labor Research and Education. And so this is a public document, but there wasn't any way for us to manipulate it to make it larger. So I do apologize if the type is too small for you.
My old eyes.
I have
magnifying glass.
I have actually outlined in the report the cities, the relevant cities that are listed on here. So you don't have to strain your eye, but I did want you to see the document on which I based the information that, and I'll be going over with you. We will attempt to extrapolate from this as we go forward, if that's the wish of the council, to provide a separate document that would only isolate the cities that you would want us to show into, in a smaller spreadsheet, so it would be more readable. Just by way of background, to talk about the minimum wage, I have provided for you in the staff report a definition of various wage terms. The most obvious one, and the one that is focused on most often, is the minimum wage, which is established by federal, state, and in some instances local government laws. And they set the lowest wage an employer can legally pay to workers. California law now, as a result of the passage of SB 3, Senate Bill 3, and the approval of the governor last year in March of 2016, provides for the requirement of a minimum wage across all industries that is not less than $10 per hour, and that became effective on January 1 of this year. However, that increase in the minimum wage, which applies to employers of 26 or more employees, is actually $10.50. So the state law actually segregates out businesses that have 26 or more employees and has set the minimum wage at the higher level of $10.50 an hour, effective January 1. And businesses with 25 or fewer employees have had the minimum wage established at $10 an hour, effective January 1. So it's actually 50 cents less an hour for smaller businesses. Senate Bill 3 also provided for an extra year to implement the full wage increase to $15 an hour for small businesses. So under the current law, from January 1 of this year, 2017, until January 1 of 2022, the minimum wage increase statewide will go from $10.50 an hour up to $15 an hour in 2022. For small businesses, the increase would start this year, but would continue on for an additional year to 2018 to rise to the level of $15 an hour. So that's the current status of the minimum wage law in the state of California. The federal minimum wage for covered non-exempt employees has been and remains $7.25 per hour since July 24th of 2009. So there's not been a federal minimum wage increase. Living wages raise the minimum hourly wage to a level sufficient for workers to meet the basic needs of their families without public assistance. Now, a living wage may very well be in excess of a minimum wage. These would include the kinds of things that people need to be able to afford with a living wage would be housing, food, child care, health care, transportation, and taxes. And some local governments actually have established laws that provide both living wages and minimum wages. According to the California Family Economic Self-Sufficiency Standard, a family of 4 in this state, comprised of 2 working adults with 1 preschool child and 1 school-aged child, would, for example, need to earn an hourly wage of $21.17 an hour, or the equivalent of $89,440 annually in order to meet the basic needs for a family of 4 here in San Mateo County. Now, we all recognize that the Bay Area, and particularly our county, is one of the most expensive counties in the state to live. So these numbers for a living wage wouldn't necessarily apply statewide, but they are calculated based on our cost of living here. Thirdly, the prevailing wage is a base pay rate established by state and federal law to ensure that all construction workers that are involved in public works projects are paid adequately for the trades or the crafts that they represent. So the prevailing wage is actually a combination of an hourly rate plus fringe benefits. So prevailing wage can often be higher than the minimum wage. Payment of prevailing wages is really intended to ensure that contractors will hire qualified workers, and particularly for public projects, to ensure the quality standard and to ensure that those who are delivering the services are adequately trained to provide the final work product. The city currently does not require the payment of prevailing wages for private development projects. So for like housing projects or even commercial projects. So for example, the expansion of Serramonte Shopping Center. We could not, because we don't have a prevailing wage ordinance that would require a private developer to pay prevailing wage. And so we could not require them to do so. However, the property owners at Serramonte Shopping Center elected on their own to enter into an agreement to pay prevailing wage to employees, to require the contractor and its subs to pay prevailing wage to employees who worked on the expansion at Serramonte Shopping Center. And so private developers can choose to enter into project labor agreements because we don't have a requirement, and they can choose to do so. And that has occurred on selected projects in recent history. Now, across the U.S. And statewide, as I mentioned earlier, and also regionally, there have been a number of wage actions. So I won't go into all of them. As I said, there's this whole listing here on this inventory of wage actions that have taken. Some of the highlights across the nation that have occurred, where a minimum wage that increases to $15 an hour have been implemented in cities like Seattle, Washington, which implemented a $15 an hour minimum wage that is phased in depending upon the size of the employer. Fast food workers in New York City will receive a wage increase to $15 an hour by next year, by 2018. And elsewhere in the state, the increase will be phased in by 2021 for fast food workers in chains with at least 30 outlets in a jurisdiction. In Washington, D.C., a voter-initiated measure last year in 2016 raises the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2020. And most recently, just a few weeks ago, voters in Kansas City, Missouri approved an increase to their local minimum wage, which is $7.70 per hour. And the voters in Kansas City approved a raise in the minimum wage to $10, effective August 24th. However, subsequent to that vote, there was an immediate action by the state legislature in Missouri to enact a law that prohibits individual cities in that state from setting their own wage minimum. So it essentially invalidated the vote that occurred in that local jurisdiction. So that's kind of just a very broad overview of what's going on across the country. Here in California, some cities have established minimum wages that are higher than the current statewide minimum wage, and that includes, even with the 50-cent increase where we're up to $10.50 an hour, a number of cities have increased their local minimum wage beyond that. So for example, here in San Mateo County, effective January 1, 2017, the city of San Mateo increased its minimum wage citywide for most businesses to $12 an hour. And $10.50 an hour for nonprofit organizations. So what they have done is they have phased in the increases for nonprofit organizations in order for those nonprofits that are typically not as well funded to be able to implement increases in the minimum wage, but over a longer period of time. the city of San Mateo is currently the only jurisdiction in San Mateo County that has increased the minimum wage beyond what the state minimum wage is. Elsewhere in Santa Clara County, which is our neighboring county to the south, several cities have increased the minimum wage in their jurisdictions. The city of Los Altos raised theirs to $12 an hour effective the first of this year, as did the city of Palo Alto. The city of Santa Clara increased its to minimum wage to $11 an hour last year, effective January 1 last year. A couple of cities, the city of Milpitas increased their citywide minimum wage to $11 an hour, effective just recently on July 1. And the city of Sunnyvale increased their minimum wage to $13 an hour, effective on January 1 of this year. Beyond our county, in the greater Bay Area, a number of cities have increased the minimum wage as well in their jurisdictions. San Francisco increased on July 1 to $14 an hour. The city of Berkeley will be increasing on October 1 their minimum wage to $13.75 an hour. And as you can see, many of these cities in the East Bay will, if not effective January 1 or July 1 of this year, or previously, as with the city of Oakland, they increased their minimum wage to $12.25 an hour, effective in March of 2015. So many of those East Bay cities have already begun the phase-in over a period of a couple of years, the increases up to $15 an hour. Other cities in the state that have taken action to increase the minimum wage include the city of Los Angeles, which essentially does what the city of San Mateo does, which increased on July 1 their minimum wage to $12 for large businesses with 26 employees or more, and effective next year on July 1, will increase the hourly wage for smaller businesses of 25 or fewer employees and nonprofits. The County of Los Angeles also increased the minimum wage to $10.50 on July 1. The City of Malibu down in Southern California also followed suit with LA and increased to $12 an hour their minimum wage on July 1, but again, is phasing it in for smaller businesses next year. Pasadena increased on July 1 to $12 an hour. San Diego increased to $11.50 an hour on January 1st of this year, and Santa Monica increased to $12 an hour effective July 1. Same for large businesses. Small businesses will be deferred for 1 year to 2018. Here locally, the County of San Mateo has been considering the adoption of a living wage ordinance that would apply to county contracts, and that is similar to what other counties in the region have implemented, including the counties of Marin and Alameda. In addition to increasing the minimum wage, some jurisdictions have also enacted wage policies that include enhancements to benefits for things such as paid sick time, health insurance coverage, and even in some cases, retirement. The City of San Francisco requires the payment of health care insurance for employees, and so that's part of their wage ordinance. Emeryville and Oakland have adopted minimum wage ordinances that include additional paid sick leave beyond the state requirement of 3 days. And some jurisdictions have also chosen to include provisions that relate to working conditions. So, for example, ensuring stable work hours and shifts and guaranteeing scheduling anywhere from a week to 2 weeks in advance so people can plan their work schedules accordingly. And some have also adopted formal mechanisms to ensure that they are able to reduce wage theft. So where employees are required to work overtime and they may not receive their overtime pay, they may be told after they worked that they'll be given paid time off in lieu of payment. So in order to avoid those kinds of things, some cities enact ordinances to address those issues. So what are some of the potential impacts from the increased statewide minimum wage? Well, prior to the approval of Senate Bill 3, there was a voter initiated ballot measure that was being considered, which was titled the Fair Wage Act of 2016. And the state legislative analysts actually looked at that initiative and quantified what the potential impacts would be if that initiative had gone forward and been placed on the ballot. It was subsequently withdrawn when Senate Bill 3 was approved. But the legislative analysts' review of the legislation provides us with some insights as to what the potential impacts of increasing the minimum wage might be. It was forecast by the legislative analysts that a $15 an hour statewide minimum wage could encourage more people to enter the labor market. This could result in giving workers the ability to have more disposable income. However, it was opined that it could also produce price increases by businesses in order to pay an increase in the minimum wage. It could result in a reduction in business profits, which might cause businesses to close. And the elimination of low-wage jobs through automation or technology improvements. So rather than pay an increase in minimum wage to low-wage earners, they would just eliminate their jobs and use some form of automation in order to reduce the number of employees. That report by the legislative analysts asserted that the potential net fiscal impact of the measure was really uncertain, that one couldn't tell how much it would raise the income of workers and how much impact it would have on reductions in business profits, which could affect the economy. And that it was also opined by the legislative analysts that it could reduce state income tax revenue while increasing state and local taxes. And that was viewed as potentially a negative impact on the state. Overall, the impact to the state and local revenues was estimated to range from a loss of hundreds of millions of dollars to a gain of more than $1 billion in the economy. So when considering a potential increase in the minimum wage, it's important to consider demographic indicators that affect low-wage workers and how a minimum wage can positively impact those low-wage workers. So in San Mateo County, low-wage workers, those who are earning $15 an hour or less, account for about 25% of the county-wide workforce. And economists estimate that well over half of the jobs added in San Mateo, Marin, and San Francisco counties by 2020 will actually pay less than $50,000 annually, which would put those individuals who are lucky enough to have jobs that are created in those counties, it would designate them as low-wage earners. A number of demographics represent characteristics of workers who earn $15 an hour or less within our county. And among those characteristics are that 71% of low-wage workers are 25 to 64 years old, and 22% are 18 to 24 years old. So we're talking about people who are starting out their work careers at a very low wage, and those who are actually probably having worked as part of the workforce for several years, up until those who are spending most of their careers and maybe retiring at age 65. So most of those people, 71%, are low-wage earners. Low-wage workers' racial and ethnic backgrounds parallel that of the county overall. 35% are Latino, 29% are Asian, and 27% are white. However, Latino workers are 3 times more likely to be low-wage earners than the white population. 1/3 of low-wage workers live in households that earn below 200% of the federal poverty level, which translates to earning $48,000 annually for a family of 4. And you've heard before when we've had conversations, and there are those who dispute what the poverty level is. The federal government determines what a family of 4 should make, and that's $48,000, although we have many people who live and work who are making less than that. But based on federal guidelines, that is still considered a poverty level, and it is considered a low-wage earner. 80% of workers living below this standard earn low wages. Approximately 70% of low-wage workers are U.S. citizens, and that debunks the myth that it's undocumented people who really are at the lowest end of the wage earning schedule, and that they have to accept low wages because of their immigration status. But in reality, many or a great majority of the low-wage earners are U.S. citizens. Low-wage workers are found in all industries, but are concentrated working in professional, scientific, and technical services. Now, these are support people that are working in those areas. In the retail trades, in healthcare and social assistance, and particularly in lodging, accommodations, or hospitality and food services, as well as in the arts, entertainment, and recreational areas. And more than half of low-wage earners have had at least some college education, which means that not everyone who is a low-wage earner is in that predicament because they are uneducated. Indeed, about 1/5 have a bachelor's degree or higher and just are not able to find employment which is appropriate for their level of education. Many low-wage workers, about 43%, are married couples in which both adults work, and a significant number, about 14%, are headed by single working women. Nearly half, or 43%, live in households that also have children. And that, again, that's throughout San Mateo County. Health research that has been developed by the county health system has identified the need to have access to a livable income as an important predictor of an individual's health and influencing overall health status, life expectancy, birth weights for children, cardiovascular diseases, asthma, obesity, and a variety of other health conditions. Obviously, changes in income have particularly strong health impacts for those near the poverty level because of their the lack of access to healthful food and the basics of everyday living that could enhance their overall physiology. More specifically, earning higher wages can positively influence health outcomes by allowing workers to pay for goods and services that are necessary for a healthy life, which means medical care, healthy and nutritious food, quality housing, and even enhancing their education so that they can improve their economic position. It also can make it possible to afford quality living environments with health supportive amenities such as parks and open space, good schools, nearby employment, clean air, safe streets. In San Mateo County, the average age of death, amazingly, varies about 19 years when you compare the most affluent and the least affluent community demographic. So, for example, the average age of death in a very affluent community like Atherton is 81 years. And in a very low wage earning community like East Palo Alto, that number drops to 62 years. Obviously impacted by lack of health care and a variety of other factors that I've mentioned. And it makes it less necessary for people to work long hours and multiple jobs when they have a more sustainable living wage. It allows workers to engage more fully in their communities. Here in Daly City, we have found ourselves many times when we have conducted public meetings and outreach and attempted to engage the public, we've gotten many responses from our residents in the community that they have multiple jobs and they can't attend meetings at night or on weekends. And so clearly within our own community, we have residents who are impacted in this way. But by paying a living wage, it allows people to both engage more fully in the community, be able to improve their overall health by providing for more nutritious meals, scheduling medical appointments, and the things that we take for granted when we are not members of that low wage earning community. Now, if the City Council were to provide direction to staff that you want to consider a potential increase to the minimum wage, there are some potential city impacts, because if we require a citywide minimum wage increase, the same rules would apply for the city, which means that all of our per diem or part-time employees who are hourly employees, any increase in the minimum wage would affect them as well. In our city, we have a total of 249 per diem employees or hourly employees in 22 classifications. Based on that, we've looked at the current increase to the state minimum wage, which is effective on January 1, 2018, and that will increase our budget for our hourly employees by $78,000. So if the city were to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour in an expedited manner in a shorter period of time than the state minimum wage, obviously that would have an impact on our budget and would probably increase it within a year or two over $100,000 a year. Any further potential increases would increase that number accordingly. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, one of the considerations that the council should give in thinking about the potential for adopting an increased local minimum wage is enforcement, because it will require enforcement to ensure that all businesses within the city are complying with the increase in the minimum wage. And that would require some sort of staff enforcement costs. Typical enforcement duties would include community outreach, in other words, making the community of workers in Daly City aware of their rights under a new minimum wage ordinance that might be approved. Conducting compliance review among all the businesses in the city, and managing a complaint process if employees find that their employer is shortchanging them or not paying the appropriate local minimum wage. Although we don't really know what the size and the cost of enforcement would be at this point in time, it's certainly something that we would have to do more detailed analysis if the direction that you provide is that you want us to proceed with looking at an increase in the minimum wage. And this would have to be a cost that would have to be factored in. Now, the city of San Mateo has chosen to contract for its enforcement of its minimum wage law. And they have contracted with the City of San Jose Office of Equality Assurance. The City of San Jose has a local minimum wage increase of its own, and they have established an office. San Jose obviously is a much larger city than us, that is able to conduct the compliance. And the City of San Mateo was able to contract in the first year for compliance at a cost of about $30,000 a year. Another issue that the council would want to consider before making a determination about a potential increase in the minimum wage would be stakeholder input. Obviously, an increase beyond what the state minimum wage is will have a significant impact on businesses of all sizes in our community. And at a time when we're trying to build an even stronger local business community, that could have a detrimental effect, particularly for small businesses that may have very few employees and not be in a position, even if you phased in at a later date an increase for smaller businesses. Small family-owned businesses might not be able to afford that, and it could result in a negative effect on some of our small businesses. It could cause other businesses that are larger to decide to relocate to some other jurisdiction if they found that it would impact their bottom line to have to be paying an increase beyond the state's minimum wage. So having some conversations in a public forum with the business community, with their representatives, with the chamber, and then inviting representatives across the spectrum of industries represented in the city and business sizes. So large businesses, medium-sized businesses, small businesses, retail, healthcare, the whole variety of businesses that we have in the community, I think would be really important for us to be able to generate input and to be able to summarize for the council what the concerns are. And if the council were to consider an ordinance to increase the minimum wage, the local minimum wage in Daly City, there may be some sort of action that the council would want to take with such an ordinance to address some of the issues that might be identified when we talk to the business community. We also should be working with the labor community. The City of San Mateo definitely brought together a coalition of labor representatives to talk about the impact of an increase in the minimum wage in their community. And while overall the labor community in San Mateo County supports an increase in the minimum wage for all wage earners across our county, there were concerns about the implementation and how that would be done, and particularly for small businesses and nonprofits who also were concerned about the impact on their service delivery and operations. So we'd want to include them. And obviously we'd want to have a conversation with the community here, with our taxpayers in the city, to talk about what they feel, many of whom are low-wage earners, what we should be doing, and getting their own personal stories and insights about the difficulty of surviving on less than a living wage in this very expensive county. All of that, I think, could also inform the council about which direction you might want to take in the future on a potential minimum wage increase. Based on the preliminary study that we've done on all these various topics that I've outlined for you in this report, several different policy options have been identified for the council to consider. This is not all of them. We certainly the council may have other ideas, but among the options that we have developed for the council to consider are, number one, you can choose to take no action at this time, since the passage of SB 3 last year will implement a phased-in minimum wage increase to $15 an hour within the next 5 years. Or You could consider a local minimum wage requirement at a higher amount than the statewide level and enact the requirement at a future date or phased in over a period of time, but less than the period of time for the state minimum wage to rise to the level of $15 an hour. You might also want to consider a living wage ordinance to apply to city contracts and or to affect our hourly employees here in Daly City. And 4, you might want to consider a prevailing wage requirement for private development projects in the city, since we do not currently require that. As I conclude this report to you, I'm seeking your direction on these or other policy options which you may have already thought about to be investigated further and for us to come back with more information that relates to what you are specifically interested in. Since I didn't receive that direction, I just got the request to put this on a study session, and so I don't have a sense of where the council is on the idea of a minimum wage. So getting that information will then help to inform us as to what additional work needs to be done for the council to consider some action at a future date. And with that, I will conclude my report to you and be glad to respond to any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Martell. I do have a card from the public on this matter, so I'd like to start off with public comment. Ms. Pamela D. Giovanni.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. First, I also thank Ms. Martell and the staff for even raising the issue of minimum wage is dire in these current crises that we're in. And I know that it's something that needs to be studied and bring stakeholders in. And she said labor is even also want to know about the implementation of such an increase in minimum wage. But the fact that we're living in this inequity in San Mateo County and beyond, that I know that this will be something that as we go into it and however you want to implement it, and even at our city level, that we can get and pay and prove that we care about the workers, even at the city, and that, you know, it's a lot to have to do with respect also, and that we cannot afford these people to try to worry about their families, and although complicated. And I'd like to thank Senator Leno publicly, for he is the one, the SB3, who always stands for equity, as we all know, and has a history of that. So thank you very much for bringing this forward tonight, and look forward to hearing back from Ms. Martell and Ms. Schott and the council as to what is moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve Giovanni. Mr. Sonny Kinney. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, honorable council members. Good evening, Pat. I want to thank all of you for taking this step into addressing the earnings of our population here in Daly City. It's been a long time that this had been initiated, and there really is a need for an increase. And therefore, the question that we have to answer here is, why not? There is no reason why it should not happen. And therefore, we should move on and look into the how much. But then again, as Pat had mentioned, this is a very complex issue with both sides of the equation having positive and negatives, the business owners and our workers. Now, another important feature of this complexity are the consumers, all of us here. I had really a bad experience with an increase of minimum wage in San Francisco in a restaurant when I was presented a bill and in that is included the increase that they were giving to their employees.
Of course.
I never went back to the restaurant, but I'm just citing an example where, aside from labor and companies and all of this, there should be an equal communication with the community. And with that, I suggest that we go into local meetings. I will invite you to hold a meeting at the Franciscan where we can invite everybody in Daly City and share these issues. And you have a very good audience there because there's a large number of people who are not working and who are low-income population. So thank you very much. Finally, we're moving into this. Anything that the Franciscans can step in and help you with this process, let us know, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kinney. All right, I have no further cards. I'll now open it up to council for discussion.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Vice Mayor.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I do want to say thank you for bringing this to our attention, Mayor Sylvester, and bringing it to Ms. Martell to put in discussion and having a report. Just given the information and the facts that we've received this evening, I think it's definitely important for us to take a step forward because, it's important for us to move forward and see what the next steps are, right? Which is, let's engage our small businesses, let's engage our residents, and this has been stated. But I like to see how we can see this in a timeline. This can take longer than it seems, but there's an urgency towards families and individuals that don't, have the quality of life that they should be receiving. And so I think for me, it's important to look at both 2, 3, and 4. I mean, that's a lot on there, but and really see what take a deeper dive and look into what the costs are, and also because these recommendations, as it states, it will help, communities and individuals have a healthier lifestyle and, have a healthier community in general. And so all this information is useful. For me personally, I think it's to move forward in getting our adequate community input is crucial. And as stated, all the stakeholders, right? You mentioned labor, residents, small businesses. But for me, looking at 2, 3, and 4, and moving forward with that, also providing a timeline in which we would have these outreach meetings. And I appreciate the leadership of the mayor in this.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Any other comments?
Just one is that the state law, as it now stands, is a $1. I mean, if it's $5 over, it's going up from 10 to 15, roughly. So that's $1 a year per hour increase already. So when you're looking at what a small family-run business can afford to pay and still remain in business, they're already raising, for every hour that someone works in their business, that's an extra $1 that they're paying. Now, many of these small family businesses are not actually a for-profit business. They are working just to support themselves and their family. There's no profit to reinvest or anything like that. They're just trying to keep a roof over their head and food on the table for their family. And a lot of times when you go into these small businesses, grandma's working there. You got 3 kids that are in high school working there, and an auntie's working there, and everybody's pulling together. In fact, many of these families live in in one or two houses and a very, very large number of people living in one property because of the low wages that they have. So it's, we need to hear from those people to find out if this, if an increase in excess of what the state would do would put them and their family in jeopardy, or would it be a benefit? Because they only have so much money coming in the door. So I'd want to definitely hear from them to make sure that we're not putting the most needy in our community out of work completely. And just an anecdote from my youth, my first job, I worked at minimum wage, $1.25 an hour. I was in a union. Well, actually not really a union member yet because I hadn't been on the job 30 days. We went on strike. We striked for 2 months. We got our salaries raised to $1.45 an hour, and then 2 days later the state raised it to $1.45 an hour. So it was like, yeah, well, we did all that work and all that effort, and we ended up in the same place we would have been if we had just stayed on the job. So what that has taught me, that whenever you're dealing with wages or this kind of thing, you need to do your due diligence about understanding what the lay of the land is so that you don't end up just creating a lot of work that ends up in not benefiting the workers. So I'd like to know more information.
Thank you, Ms. Christensen. Vice Mayor, you got another comment?
Yeah, I just wanted clarification. So for the audience, I didn't state what 2, 3, and 4 were, as I mentioned. So in 2 is consider a local minimum wage requirement at a higher amount than the statewide level and enact this requirement at a future date, which could be phased in over a period of time, not necessarily at one time. 3, consider a living wage ordinance to apply to the city contracts or per diem hourly employees. And 4, consider a prevailing wage requirement for private development projects in the city. So I wanted to note that for the members watching and in the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. All right, my comments are as follows. I've read all the recommendations here. Option number 1 is to wait till 2016 to implement SB 3, which increases the rate per hour at $1 per hour commencing as of today. So by the year 2022, it would be $15 an hour.
That's correct.
Number 2. Consider a local minimum wage requirement at a higher amount than the statewide level. And I favor number 2, and I'll explain why. I want to talk about number 3, consider a living wage ordinance to apply to city contracts and or per diem hourly employees. The problem I have with the living wage ordinance is it doesn't apply to everyone. It just applies to city contracts, to what I see is written here. Mm-hmm. Just city contracts, but big businesses and other businesses, it doesn't apply, not unless they have a contract with the city. So I have a problem with that. Item number 4, consider a prevailing wage requirement for private development projects in the city. Again, this tells me it's just private development, but it doesn't occur throughout the whole city for those that are public or nonprofit. It just talks about private development projects in the city. Like projects is the magic word. So, getting back to number 2.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
Any of the options, these are not recommendations. These are just options that I
All right.
developed for you based on the research that I did.
Thank
So
you.
any of these options can be modified any way that the council so chooses. So there's nothing that says that if you want to expand the option that I have presented to you in any way to be inclusive of other groups or businesses or whatever, you certainly can do that. This was a starting point for you to begin to have a conversation about the direction you want. Because I need to know where I should be focusing our efforts to research and then develop an ordinance that will accommodate what it is that the council's trying to achieve. And I have no idea what that is. So I don't know how many years you want it phased in. I don't know the amounts you want phased in. So these options are intended just to generate that conversation to give us some starting point of what we should be looking at.
Thank you, Ms. Martell. I have those figures for you. You also made a statement out of 249 employees in Daly City at a cost of $78,000. What it cost us now.
No, that will be January 1, when the next increase in the state minimum wage goes into effect. That's what it will be.
Okay, so can you tell me what our employees, I guess part-time, or what is it that the city pays them now?
Different amounts.
Well, we pay them different classifications, have different wages. Okay, but
all right.
But we have to ensure that for hourly people that we're paying at least the minimum of what the state requirement is. But they're all different wages, so I can't tell you specific. I mean, I can get you that, but they're all different depending upon what their job classification is.
All right. The reason why I asked that question because I'm getting to the chart that I would like to see us work towards, and to include the public, the businesses, and our government. This is what I'm looking at. Taking the figure as of 2017, the rate is $10.50 per hour. Whether this can be done, I don't know, but I was looking at $12 an hour in 2018, $13.50 an hour in 2019, and
I'm sorry, can you start that again? I'm sorry.
Yes, Ms. Martell.
So $10.50 currently.
And
then
2018, $12 an hour. 2019, $13.50 an hour, and 2020, $15 an hour. So I feel if we put this out and get comment from everyone, understandably so, if we were to follow that schedule, we would hit the $15 per hour 2 years ahead of Senate Bill 3. But, you know, I'm open if we have to move it down commencing 2019 instead of 2018. I just don't know the process as we go along as to what it would take. The reason I feel this way is in San Mateo County alone, just San Mateo County, low-wage workers are between the ages of 25 and 64. That's a big range. Nearly 45% of them are raising children. And they consist of jobs in local industries, but concentrated in service and leisure sectors. So that could be like care homes, rest homes. And I had an issue, you made mention about a project labor agreement at one particular location, but I think that's not the subject here. So we'll talk about that some other time, because I didn't know we had an agreement at one particular area, to which I learned that there's a problem. But that's my thought. I prefer option number 2, because even though I think a living wage ordinance, number 3, if we modify that, I feel that it's not, I feel it doesn't really have that much meat in it. And the prevailing wage requirement seems to me, we discussed that this evening, especially in new developments, and to include private developments. I just feel if we had just have an overall ordinance throughout the entire city that I feel that would be how I feel.
So, Mr. Mayor, may I ask you this? Based on the information that I provided for you in the report, as well as the comment that was made earlier by Councilmember Christensen, is there any thought that you've given and want to provide direction as we begin to sort of formulate what a proposed ordinance might look like as to exemptions that the council might want to consider? So either all-out exemptions or exemptions for small businesses and nonprofits that would delay the increase so that for large businesses, you know, it would increase faster. Small businesses, they would eventually get to that either by excluding them from the increase for citywide and just allowing the state minimum wage to be implemented fully by 2022, or maybe delaying it by a year, as is the case with a number of cities who've delayed it a year longer than reaching the full $15 minimum wage within like a 3-year period. So they give nonprofits and small businesses 4 years to be able to do that.
Ms. Martell, that is an excellent question. Thank you so much. Actually, I forgot it. I am sensitive to the needs of small businesses, and Madam Christensen, what she made mention earlier as well. In your report, you indicated 15 or fewer employees. Now,
25
yes.
25 or fewer.
A mom and pop store that employs, say, two folks, or maybe they have their own family working in there. I don't know how they pay their employees. They may be doing it for nothing, especially if it's family, because they have to sustain themselves. I think there should be a mechanism in place, and I think this is too difficult to say based upon, because they have to have a business license in Daly City, and we find out what the income is per year. If your adjusted gross income does not exceed a certain amount of money, then you would be absolved from having to pay the mandated raises. But that makes it difficult, I understand, because how do we pick who should, what that rate should be? I'm definitely open. We should start off with X number of employees, and if you're classified as a small business, say making less than $200,000 a year, anything $200,000 and less.
We're talking gross or net?
Yeah.
I would say the adjusted gross income, because that's after they take off and deduct for all of their.
So that would be net.
You're right. The adjusted gross income.
Well, they have to show their.
Well, gross is what you totally bring in, and net
Totally.
is what you have left over after you pay all your expenses.
Right. So I think that's a starting point to.
So let me understand. So small businesses would potentially be exempted from paying an increase in a citywide minimum wage if their adjusted gross income is $200,000 or less annually.
Is there any way that we can query these businesses that when they file every year for their business license?
Well, business license, we do require that they show evidence of their business earnings, so they have to provide tax return information to us, so we can do that, yes.
And I think if we get the
But
public.
again, it goes back to the enforcement part of it, is that now that adds a whole new
Yes.
addition to what we have to do with business license in order to be able to review all of those business licenses and determine whether or not they actually do qualify for an exemption.
And nonprofits, they should not be at the same rate?
Actually, nonprofits are a source of underpaid employees.
Absolutely. So they would be
I
exempt.
mean, here are the people with the best hearts doing hard work and
Right.
getting paid less. They're already getting paid less.
So-
I mean, I understand the nonprofit can't afford to pay them because they don't have a rapidly increasing
Sure.
source of income, but
So in the survey that we did, those jurisdictions that segregate out nonprofits and/or small businesses, they don't completely exempt them. They just give them additional time to phase it in, so that they can adjust their budgets accordingly. And because I think Councilmember Christensen makes a very good point that nonprofit agencies typically pay less than other agencies, and so those workers generally are low-wage earners. They may be passionate about the work they're doing, but by comparison, they are low-wage earners generally.
I think that's where you find your people with the graduate degrees that are still low-income wage earners.
Yes, you probably
Many of
would.
them,
Exactly.
Yeah.
You would find a lot of them working in nonprofits.
Yeah.
Well, I understand. That's why from what I'm hearing two sides. Shall we exempt them completely, or shall it be at a lower rate? And I'm of the opinion that they're already low as it is, but they should be completely exempt.
Is that, in the models that you have, including San Mateo, what does San Mateo do?
San Mateo has the requirement that nonprofits pay the increase in the minimum wage, but they've given them additional time to phase it in.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you're not raising the economic level of all those individuals working in
Yeah.
nonprofits, if you're exempting their agency from paying them the higher wage.
Yeah, I think maybe giving them more time.
Yeah.
The hours in other cities.
I'm looking at the mayor's suggested price increase or wage increase by time. When you say 2018, $12, that's 6 months from now. So that's not really a year, 2017's half over.
Yes, thank you for that. And according to the report we have in front of us, we don't have to do it in January. We can do it in July.
Oh, yeah, you can so I just,
Yes, you can do it in January or July, whatever. So it could be a year from now.
But it's very important to get small business in and so that we can all work together and come up with a solution.
so you're looking at adding 50 cents a year.
$1.50.
Well, they're already paying $1. The state requires a $1 increase.
So 50 cents.
And if you're going from,
Correct.
so you're just adding an extra 50 cents to that. I'm just trying to put
That's
it in
correct.
perspective of how much of an increase it's going to be for people.
Now, actually, the state minimum wage, Councilmember Christensen, goes from $10.50 an hour effective this past January to $11 an hour. So it raises it 50 cents an hour over that period of time.
Okay.
Until for the first year, 2 years, till 18, and then in 19, it goes from $11 to $12.
Okay.
And then.
So they're sort of starting slow and building.
Starting slow, phasing it in slowly. And then in 2020, it rises from $12 to $13. In 2021, from $13 to $14. And then finally in 2022, it rises to $15 an hour.
Gotcha.
Ms. Martell, do you
Yes.
have another copy down there?
That's okay, I got you.
Oh, yes,
okay.
yes.
Just there. Good to see you.
I thought I had 5 copies here.
Don't worry about this one, because we couldn't all see this, but it's summarized here.
Are you talking about,
Okay, I can share.
the staff report? Yes, here you go.
No, I don't want you to see my notes.
I've been listening. I've been listening.
Oh, okay.
Listen on the radio on the way here.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so it rises slowly, but then by 2019, it begins to increase more substantially at $1.
I see. I have no further comment.
So let me just say, so I've been listening attentively on YouTube, on the radio, on the way here. I thought that presentation was really good. I agree with the vice mayor, and we need to take a deeper dive into this. I'm in favor of option number 2. I could see us working out some of the details, you know, with respect to things like nonprofit and you know, when we're going to come at with the dates. But I actually like the dates proposed by the mayor. So I'd like us to move forward in that regard.
I'm going to study a raise. I'm not sure if I'm wedded to either one of these options, but I think taking a look at what the financial impacts to us as a city need to be looked at a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sort of balancing, the state's going to get us there in 5 years, and that's not going to cost the city anything. So if we do something, and then we have to have increased enforcement that we pay for, and is that going to come out of the reserves too? So I think we have, for me, the financial obligation that it would put on the city, and what is that going to mean? What kind of services are we going to have to cut, or what kind of wage increases are we not going to be able to pay if that cost goes up? So I think we need to look at the full range of financial implications.
Well, there's the costs associated with implementing any program. So this would be implementing a program, determine what the costs associated are with that. That'd be great.
Okay.
But I have to say I'm thrilled that the state has stepped up and is doing this for all sorts of cities.
I said that I'd like to look at the costs associated with as with any program, there will be ancillary effects throughout the city. So I'd like to see what those costs are specifically to determine whether or not that will be a drain or a burden on us. That's what the cost benefit out is. The whole thing is determining whether it's worth it to do this. So I'm game for that.
Okay. So I guess the last question I have in terms of direction of how you'd like to see this unfold, is it your wish that we put together sort of a draft kind of ordinance that would address these issues that you've identified, bring it back to you and have a conversation about it, and then once you iron out some of the issues that may arise through reviewing a draft ordinance, then at that point in time, when we have something that is a more complete draft, then taking that out to the public to do outreach and that kind of thing. And then subsequent to that, bring back the input we receive and whatever proposed changes that we would recommend to the ordinance based on the input that we've received, all of which would be subject to your approving it or not approving it, the changes, but we could do it that way. So is that the direction that you'd like us to move?
Yes.
Ms. Martell, that sounds good to me also as well.
Perfect. Well, we can do that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Wow. All right. You want to continue, Ms. Martell?
No.
You had additional items or something like that?
Miscellaneous items.
Yes.
One of the things that I did want to raised with the council, and it actually just came up this evening, was Councilmember Buenaventura had asked if we could continue the proposed meeting for next week to a date
Yes.
What
after
meeting?
that,
What's
and
this?
most likely a Friday, you said?
Yes.
Okay,
What meeting are
so
you talking about?
we'd be glad to accommodate that. What I need to know is, what are we talking about in terms of a Friday timeline? Because if I'm bringing in consultants and I have staff, it's kind of hard to do it on a Friday night. So if we were going to do it in an afternoon session for you.
Yeah, that's fine.
What are we looking at in terms of a timeline?
We're talking about the marijuana.
Yes.
What did it change from? What was it supposed to be?
So we're gonna have it Monday
Next
night,
Monday.
but there's a conflict, so I'm trying to get direction from you to adjust it. But I need to know what kind of a time frame during the day we're talking about in order to accommodate that, because it would be very difficult to have staff and consultants show
Friday
up
doesn't
on
work for
Friday
me.
night.
So are we canceling Monday?
Well, that's what
We
has been
haven't-
proposed, but I'm trying to find out what time on a Friday you want it.
I could do it any afternoon on a Friday, any Friday afternoon. So I could do it at 3, 4, if you don't want to go into the evening. I could even do it at 2.
Okay,
So,
I'm a little confused. What's the problem with the date that it is now?
I can't make it.
Oh, so something came up that you
Yeah.
can't, that,
Right.
so he has a conflict, which we understand, and I'm
you
just
didn't
trying
have
to.
that before.
Correct.
Came
No,
up
he just
recently.
notified us early today.
Right.
But,
Okay.
but because I'm gonna have to rearrange the consultant that I was gonna bring in, I just wanna know, if we're gonna do it on a Friday, I've gotta come up with some Fridays that would work for the consultant. But I just wanna be able to tell him what time of day we're talking about.
Is, the reason why I chose Fridays is because, is Tuesday, obviously, that's being occupied by the commission meetings, right, on Tuesdays?
Not every Tuesday.
Not every Tuesday?
Not every Tuesday.
I could do Tuesday,
Okay, so Tuesday would work.
yeah, but I just
Talking the
thought,
It all depends
29th.
on what Tuesday.
Yeah.
You're talking the 29th?
No, I'm in 2 counties on that day.
yeah, I could do the 29th.
What about the 30th? But can everybody do the 29th?
I
Mike cannot.
actually have a commitment already for that
What
evening.
about the 30th?
I can't do the 30th, nor,
Here's a calendar. I don't have my phone. I'm looking at
I can do the 5th.
What about the 31st?
Fifth?
September 5th.
I can do the 5th, or,
I think
No,
planning
just the
meets on.
fifth.
I can't do it the 5th, or the 7th, or the 6th in September, but I can do
So
it.
the 5th, on Monday the
can't
5th,
do the
or
5th.
excuse me,
Yes,
on
Monday.
Tuesday the 5th, if we
Can't
can
do it.
start at 5:30.
Yeah, I can't
Or
do
even
it.
5 o'clock.
Can't do it. They can't
Yeah.
do it.
Oh,
They
you can't do it on the 5th?
She can.
Okay.
I mean, I can do it every day except 5, 6, and 7 in September.
The 12th.
how about the 1st?
September 1st.
Friday.
No.
What's today?
That is the beginning of Labor Day weekend, and that would probably not work, because I probably won't have anybody here.
Certainly not late.
How about the 12th?
The 12th.
What time?
I can do it anytime in the afternoon.
In the afternoon.
I can't be here on the
Or in the
12th.
evening.
What about the 11th, on the meeting, the council meeting day?
Can't do it on the 11th.
Huh?
I cannot do it on the 11th.
Okay, so the
Well-
12th, we have an Arts and Culture Commission meeting.
But don't they meet upstairs?
Yeah, but
Oh,
I'm
you
the staff for
Oh.
it, so. it's-
How about Wednesday, the 13th?
I won't be here.
Is that League of Cities?
Oh, yeah, and I'm gonna be at the League of Cities on
Friday, the
13th.
15th.
League of Cities.
All right.
The 19th.
Can't do it that.
The
19th.
19th.
I think that's
19th
it.
works
I'm
for me.
Putting good positive.
Well,
Actually, the 19th, I have a conflict again on that that's already been previously scheduled.
22.
That's a Friday.
Well, I'll tell you, why don't you go ahead, and I'll just catch up. Just have it as scheduled on the 28th, and,
28.
because that's when it's scheduled now. I don't want to
Monday.
delay this anymore, and so I will, I'll just have to catch up somehow. Yeah, it's recorded anyway, so Yeah. And if I have any questions, I'll submit it in advance.
All right.
Let's just be.
We are a busy group of people.
That's right.
Yeah, so that's okay.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, because.
That's okay.
If
I
we could do it
understand.
in an earlier time on a Friday afternoon,
Yeah.
if we could accommodate everyone, then we can
Right.
do that.
Yeah,
Thank you for that.
that's okay. I'll catch up.
Can you call in?
Probably not. All right.
If I can work out any other options, looking at the schedules,
Let us know.
I'll let you know.
Let us know early.
Okay, and if we
Be great.
can, then we'll reschedule
All
it
right.
to accommodate.
Right, thank you.
I'm generally pretty flexible, Ms. Martell,
Okay.
anytime. Except for League of Cities.
If there is something, because, yeah, the 28th might not work for me, but if
Did-
there's something.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
The
you.
28th might not, yeah.
The 28th might not work for you. Well, then I think if that's the case, then
Now.
I
We've
think we
scheduled
should,
this.
we should reschedule, because I think it's too important an issue not to
We're gonna
have
meet.
the entire council here.
But we
we do one of
scheduled
those,
this a long time ago, and
one
when
of
you're
those-
on the council, you have a commitment. When something's scheduled, I mean, unless it's literally
Kinda
life
under
or
the gun.
death,
I
you
mean,
have to.
time-wise, it's for January, right? I mean, we're kind of under the
Right,
gun
but,
for January.
but again, I think it's too important an issue not to
Then we
have the
have
full
to-
council here, to hear the presentation, to engage in conversation, and to provide direction to the staff. And I suspect on this topic, I think that we're probably, even for the study session, probably going to have a big turnout. So, and I think that you'd want to have the full council present for a big public
Keep in
turnout.
mind that if we're going to be doing this, it's just going to get tougher and tougher to get five of us together. That's all I'm saying.
Can we use one of those apps where we can pick, where you send those out and we can all pick a
wanna be
date that's
present.
available?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
Doodle,
Oh, yeah, I
Doodle.
can do,
Doodle app.
yeah, Survey Monkey or
Yeah.
Doodle, yeah, we can do
Right.
that.
Okay.
Okay, I'll find some dates, and then I'll send the survey out to you, and we'll try and pick
So are
one
we
from there.
canceling the 28th then?
So the 28th will be canceled.
And then, are we not having the League of Cities dinner here? What day did we set that?
Yes, it is Friday, September 29th. We are having the Council of Cities, not the League
Yeah,
of
I'm
Cities.
sorry.
The Council of
Yeah.
Cities dinner is going to be at Joseph Westlake.
What day?
Okay.
Friday, September 29th. And if you are interested in attending, you need to let us know right away, because we have a maximum capacity of 50.
Yes, ma'am.
And that's all countywide elected officials. So
correct.
we want to make sure that if you are going to attend, that we have you down.
Okay.
Council of Cities?
Did you have
Any other-
anything else, Ms.
No,
Martell?
I'm done.
Council members?
No.
All right, thank you so much for your time this evening. This meeting is now adjourned.
So what was decided on the